Last year, I took 20 of my students to Advertising Week in New York City to sit down with the CEO and founder of the Female Quotient. We're sitting down at this little chat and they start asking her some questions. She goes, wait a minute, do any of you know what my brand is and what this company is? Not one person raised their hand.
Oh no.
This year, they showed up so prepared. And
wow.
it is just the tiny little things that you do to pull up Google. It could even be 5 minutes before you go. Know what you're walking into.
Today is the episode for you. I'm joined by two incredible guests, Olivia Bottinelli, advisor and instructor at NYU, who helps students land internships and ace their interviews. And I'm also joined by Jody Bullhack, a communications leader and early career coach who specializes in helping young professionals reframe challenges into opportunities. If you're new here, hi, I'm Jerica, and I love helping college students graduate employed and debt-free. So click subscribe, and I will see you on the other side. Olivia and Jody, welcome to the New College Perspective. I think our students would love to hear the work that you do and quick story about your first internship or interview, and what did you take away from that experience?
My name is Olivia Bottinelli. I currently work at NYU as an academic advisor. I also have the privilege and the opportunity to teach an interviewing course. I'll also quickly mention here that I was a recruiter post grad school. I worked for one of the big four accounting firms as a campus recruiter. And I just kind of realized, though, that what I was recruiting for wasn't speaking to my interests and my passions. But I took a lot of my skills that I learned in that stint of time and then was able to translate it into my role currently at NYU. I want to answer your question about my first interview or job experience. I'll never forget this story where my parents were taking me to an audition. An audition is very similar to an interview, right? I was auditioning for a role in Peter Pan. It's probably like 5-6 o'clock at night. Sidebar, had a whole day of school, and I get to the audition and I stand on the stage and there's a panel of 4 judges and they're like, all right, Olivia, get started. How are you doing today? And I said, I'm exhausted. And let me also just say, I didn't get the part. It was such a valuable lesson because you really start to learn some of these interview skills. Now that has stuck with me in my 28 years, that if someone asked me how I were doing, I could maybe convey that I'm exhausted. I have a lot going on, but I wouldn't just flat out say in an interview when you ask me how I'm doing, I'm exhausted. It shows I didn't want to be here.
And we'll talk about that later, about why that intro matters, right?
Yeah. Then Jody, can you share a little bit? And then I don't know if you also were a theater kid on stage.
I have 30 years plus of corporate communications experience. I was a graduate of Tulane University, a communications major and a sociology minor. And I was interested in both paths. I had an internship for 2 years, unpaid at Macy's in the events department. In Louisiana. So I did graduate, but I was very focused on communications back then, more about publicity. And I had an opportunity. This is my nerve moment. I was graduating. I was trying to set up opportunities. Right out of college, I was able to get 3 interviews. Good Morning America, a PR agency, and then where I ended up launching my career. Good Morning America. I was so excited. I was able to get my opportunity through a producer there to speak with the communications for an entry-level publicity role. The only thing I can remember 30 plus years later is just being a deer in headlights. I wasn't fully prepared. I wasn't trained to go into an interview. This was my first interview ever. And it was scary and I was nervous, and I went home feeling really down on myself and embarrassed. And I had another interview for an agency that I wasn't necessarily excited about, but a third interview with a big record company in New York City. And I said, after these 2 not so great experiences, I'm going to get this job. I'm going to channel something in me, whatever that takes. I'm going to go in and I'm going to leave with this opportunity. And I went in, I got the job, and I stayed at that job for 7 years. I decided to pivot at the age of 29. It was scary, but I did it. And my next role lasted 18 years in the media industry. And the company shut down in 2017 after a lot of change, and I had to pivot, and I did. And that led me to what I do now as a career coach.
I just love the honesty. And that's why I wanted to hear both of you guys' stories, because, you know, sometimes people get on the show and they're like, everything was perfect. Everything is awesome. I had no issues. Like, I just one day woke up and decided I want to be on top of the mountain, and here, whoa, wow, I don't know how it happened, but here I am, just, you know, doing all the things. And you guys are like, no, there were times where I wasn't sure. There were times where I had to pivot. There were times where it just didn't happen for me. I just love hearing that, because that's just so relatable. But I also know students right now are probably shouting like, Jerica, ask them, what are the most effective ways students can find internships? Where can you go? Is it all online?
So as I mentioned earlier, I teach our interviewing strategies course, but also with wearing the hat of running our internship program. There are so many resources and databases and toolkits that exist that nobody knows about. So I'm not even kidding. This last week in my class, we're sitting on Zoom, by the way, and it's an 8 a.m. Zoom class. I don't know how, honestly do not know how the students do it, but they are showing up and they are killing it. Let me just tell you. And they literally at the end, they were like, Olivia? And I said, yeah. They said, I've never heard of any of these. And it blew my mind, because they exist for a reason. So just to name a couple, it's Way Up, it's Ripple Match, it's Power to Fly. The other big one is Utilize Your Career Center on campus. I can't tell you enough. They are underutilized. They have the resources, but students, for some reason, are afraid to ask. Even the ones that, they get the really sexy internships on their resume, right, of an NBC and ABC, a Big Four. I'll ask them and I say, did you use the Career Center? And they're like, no. Why aren't you using the Career Center? The resources are there for you. There are some really neat opportunities, really neat events. So that's probably my biggest takeaway. And you don't even know some of the things that they have. A lot of your career centers will have interview platforms that you can practice mock interviews on. You know, we have this whole world of AI now, right? There's services that can help you write your resume with certain AI tools. You just don't even know the resources at your fingertips. And then the other one is, depending on what your major is, we all can use the same resources. It doesn't matter if you're a communications major or an engineering major. You can find similar opportunities in different ways, right? So what I mean by that is, ask your departments, hey, is there a newsletter that you would send out about opportunities that are within our industry? You know, I'll tell you from the communication standpoint, I try to do it every week. I do a newsletter to send to my students, all 1,000 in our media culture communication program, of the opportunities that people are reaching out to me saying, Olivia, I want NYU students. It's like you automatically have that lean into that, right? My other biggest piece of advice here is, ask your department, are there alumni groups that I can join? Because your alumni network, they all are working. They all are doing amazing things. Lean into that.
Olivia and I were talking about this yesterday. It is mind-blowing how many companies, small, mid-sized to large, names you know and names you don't know, on their actual company websites that have dedicated, organized internship programs that start when you could be a freshman, your summer internship, sometimes there's fall. And I will tell you, it's everything from Conair, the hair product, the consumer package. These are just ones that came up recently, to Cisco, to Diageo, the big consumer, and on to small companies that are maybe mid, and not just in the big cities, right? So it makes me crazy to think that some of my clients now who are coming for support upon graduation, and many in their senior year of college, have not taken advantage of these opportunities that literally want you to learn about their business, and oftentimes have opportunities when you graduate in the field that you're interested in. And, you know, I'd say today, after you listen to this, company that's interesting to you, and you're going to find on their corporate website under careers, internship, where you can go down the rabbit hole, and you'll be really surprised of companies that are looking for young people to launch with them.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I always tell, for our first and second gen students, they're like, okay, where do I start right now? I'm always saying, okay, go, if you're like, hey, I'm interested in Con Air, right? Go to ChatGPT and say, what other companies are similar in that space?
Yeah.
And now you have not just that place, but maybe 6 other ones that you can go to their website as well and start signing up to learn about the opportunities that are there. But you're so right. A lot of people don't know. I mean, that's why this channel exists, this episode. We're doing this because we want to get the word out. But I honestly believe for a lot of our first and second gen students, a big part of landing an internship that they hear often is networking. And we've kind of like alluded to it, Olivia and Jody, like throughout this, like the network and everyone here is like the network. But I want to make this practical for our students. Could each of you share one small actionable exercise that our students could do this week to start building authentic relationships to help with establishing that network in order to find and then land these opportunities?
Absolutely. The small exercise that I want to mention here is that you don't realize the power of your network. And what network means is going to be different for everybody, but you have to be intentional with your network, right? So my small exercise that I also tell a lot of the students that I work with and also my clients, because I actually don't even think I shared this, but I do have my own career coaching business as well. And it's called Live It Up Coaching.
Yes.
I work with my clients and my students and I say, you send 5 LinkedIn messages a day, but they're not just like my example I said of, this company looks really cool and I like what you do, right? No, it's you being intentional by you doing the research, but 5 LinkedIn messages a day, you can do it because I'll tell you why. You are going to have that crafted automatic text response to send and you'll tweak it just a little bit. What's going to take you the time is actually being intentional with who you're reaching out to. And that's my exercise, and I'll pass it over to.
Before I hear from Jody, I want to delve in a little bit because we're all about action. Give us a sample of what a message should look like.
This is a good one. So, and this is so funny. We were just going over this too in my interviewing strategies class this week. So when you're reaching out, right? People love to talk about themselves. An example message would just be like to reach out and say, hi, my name's Olivia. I've come across your page, would love the opportunity to be connected. If your schedule allows, I'd be happy to flex to your schedule. Can we jump on a quick, 20-minute Zoom call? I'm really curious about your background and thank you for your time. That's it. That's all you have to say. And you'd be surprised about how many people will respond to that.
Yes.
Yeah, this is great because a lot of our students are like, okay, yes, I should reach out, but what do I say? Is it just like, hey, how are you?
Hey, girl.
About yourself. Exactly. Send me the info. I want a job.
But I have a job. Bye.
Yes. Thanks. But having it tailored to this. So this is really perfect. And then Jody, do you have any thoughts too?
Just on top of that, look at your alumni, on LinkedIn, there's a tab of alumni at companies and it's just right there. LinkedIn, it populates anyone on LinkedIn. It automatically populates your company, your job, and then, where you went to university or college. So to that point, look at the people that you might want to, speak with, whether it's alumni, whether it's in an industry or a company that you're interested in. And to your point, Olivia, people at certain levels from entry to senior have no problem talking about their path and also appreciate that a young person has reached out in an appropriate way, asking for 20 to 30 minutes of your time. It's mentorship. I know a lot of, women in my generation and 40s to 50s that have had interesting paths that love to impart their wisdom and their guidance to young women, just to know that there are young college students eager for information and connection. It stands out because not everyone's doing that, right? And I've had clients in their second to third jobs, maybe in their late 20s as an example, who are still doing that. And just for like a proof point, she knew a company that she was really interested in. She's already crafted her career at a place that she knows where she wants to move next. And she reached out to someone that they had some similar background, not in terms of where they went to college, but in terms of a very similar career path that she was sort of following, and reached out to her with a really beautiful note, brief, over LinkedIn. They had not yet actually been connected. And she said, sure, absolutely. And again, they met for 30 minutes. She was happy to help in any way she could, and complete strangers, New York,
Yeah.
California, two women in different generations. And she was surprised that the woman responded. She did it on a lark. And I said, don't be surprised. There are people out there that really want to help the next generation of professionals achieve
100%.
and connect, because I think someone, certainly in my age, have realized like the difference over time and how challenging this market has become, despite everything being kind of online and visible. It is a tough market, and I'm not going to sugarcoat that, but there are ways to kind of navigate it and hopefully stand out.
Yeah, yeah. I think that is the key of not being afraid, going out. And a lot of college students are nervous to make that message. And I think it's like a mindset shift that has to occur of like, people are just nervous. They're like, okay, this person has all this experience. Why would they talk to lowly me, small me? And it's like, they want to talk to you. And a lot of
Yeah.
college students aren't doing it. So you stand out head and shoulders over so many of your peers by doing this, especially when it's thoughtful. Before I move on to the next question, kind of a thought that popped into my head was, okay, we're talking about finding internship and just opportunities online, but what about in person? Where do you guys suggest people go in person? Because I feel like that skill set is kind of like, as we're getting more digital, it's kind
Sure.
of falling to the wayside. But that in-person thing, just like with you guys, right? You met in person.
I do have my students participate every semester in what I call a networking event. I would prefer it to be an in-person networking event, but if, listen, we are living in a hybrid virtual world now. That is just our reality. And so I'm also totally okay with that. But I do like to push for them to go in person and really get uncomfortable, right? It's supposed to be uncomfortable. It's supposed to be weird. Like, nobody likes to just like walk in and be like, hey, now I might be a rare case. I could get the wall to talk back to me. But but I'm being honest, right? Like, it's weird. It's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And nobody teaches you really how to do that, right? So this networking assignment that I have my students do is to get uncomfortable with the uncomfortable. Go put yourself out there, go to a big, large scale event. And then they'll say to me, Olivia, how do I find the event? And I say, that's a really great question, right? What would you do? And they say, Google. And I said, yeah, they do have that privilege. They're lucky they can use Google to search some things. They go to some really killer universities. You're in some killer cities on awesome communities. Literally type in networking event. I can't tell you, there are so many things that are going to populate. There are Facebook groups, there are Instagram groups, there's LinkedIn groups, there's amazing alumni connections, right? You can find, I promise you, something to go to. And if you ever are curious about like how to find that, you can always reach out to me. I could probably find it for you in 5 seconds, and I'd be happy to do that. And I think it is so important to go in person, go and meet people. Listen, it doesn't have to be either this like big put together event at a hotel or
swanky.
No.
You gotta hold the wine glass.
Like, it could literally be like you go to a dinner with alumni. I mean, that's a networking event, right? So, and back to a really earlier point that Jody had made about your alumni network and that you can find who your alumni are on LinkedIn. I can't tell you enough the amount of times that a Clemson alum or a Rider alum or even NYU, because now I work there, they want to help me. So utilize and lean into your alumni network. They would love nothing more to help their fellow Clemson, Rider, NYU, Tulane person, because they came from a very similar background, and that's your instant network connection.
Yeah, no, and I love it. I feel like I would be remiss if we didn't spend a little bit of time right now talking about interview strategies. Since Olivia, you are the queen of interview strategies because you're teaching at NYU. What's the most common mistake you see students make when it comes to interviewing strategies? What are some tips students can use to stand out in a competitive interview process?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite questions, because I think we and I'm going to categorize myself into this too. It's this like stigma around interviewing that it's awkward, it's
Mm-hmm.
uncomfortable,
Mm-hmm.
it's why does it have to be this way? And I say, let's flip the question. Why does it have to be this way? It doesn't have to be this way. An interview is a conversation between
Mm.
2, 3, 4, 5 people, no matter, depending on what it is. And it should be fun. It should be it's your opportunity to, guess what? Ding, 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 build your network, right?
Mm.
It's a humanized conversation. And so I think the biggest skill that I try to teach my students in my class is to walk away just feeling good about like who they are and who their personal brand, like what that is. Like, what is your
Mm-hmm.
personal brand? What are things that you can talk about, right? You don't always have to have this like perfect crafted answer. And
Mm-hmm.
let me let you in on a little secret too. Interviewers, hiring managers, they don't want you to have a perfect answer because we're not
Mm-hmm.
perfect.
Mm-hmm.
You're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to let me take a second to think about that. You shouldn't
Mm-hmm.
automatically just be like, yep, here's my answer, blah, 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 right?
I
And
am AI. I will
I
tell
am
you.
right. And Jody and I talked about this yesterday. It's like, you are not a robot. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
take a breath, take a beat, take
Mm-hmm.
a second to really be intentional and thoughtful with your answer. And so that's the strategy in itself, right? I can teach you what a great response would look like. And it's gonna change too,
Mm-hmm.
depending on your experience and your background and what you're interested in doing and all of that. But it's really about these like softer skills. It's
Mm-hmm.
less about what your response is going to be. And so that's kind of what I really try to teach the students to do, and also start to think about some of these questions, right? My favorite thing to do, one of my assignments as well, is the elevator pitch, but I've fixed that term and
Yeah.
I call it the elevator conversation, because
Okay.
I think pitch, it's like the pitch is more
Mm-hmm.
about that's the tell me about yourself question.
Mm-hmm.
When you think about an elevator pitch, it's supposed to be like an elevator conversation. It's supposed to be you're
Mm-hmm.
in a small little space with somebody
Mm-hmm.
else and you're just like, hey, I'm
Mm-hmm.
Olivia. What's your name? Oh, Jody,
Mm-hmm.
it's so nice to meet you. I love your necklace.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so cool. You're from where? It's like so
Yes.
natural. And
Yes.
then it transitions into, this is my background, this is my experience. And
Hmm.
so what I have my students do literally as an assignment is to go to the grocery store, and they go to Trader Joe's, no
Yeah.
lie, and they're buying their produce and whatever they're going to get. And they go and they're checking out with the cashier and they
Mm-hmm.
practice the tell me about yourself question. Oh, it's so nice to
Hmm.
meet you. And I get so much feedback because then
Hmm.
again, that's the power of your network. They end up becoming
Mm-hmm.
friends with the cashier. The cashier is also a
Hmm.
college student. They're working there to make money.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have a
Mm-hmm.
friend. Now they have a connection. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that is what the interview strategy is. It's less about being prepared with these perfect polished
Mm-hmm.
answers, which we could have a whole other conversation about what should have some good crafted answers,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's really about your authentic personality showing up in the space.
I was going to say, on top of that, I'm in the trenches with these
Mm-hmm.
just recent graduates and 20 somethings or even 30 somethings that are making the pivot, trying to pivot. So the one thing about, and I love that, you don't want to sound very rehearsed. ChatGPT will
Mm-mm.
give you perfect answers and they're going to recognize that off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
But the important thing is we don't want to be over rehearsed. But the one thing I will say from lots of experience helping, young professionals navigate these scary virtual interviews,
Mm-hmm.
because no matter how confident you might think you are, this screen pops up in this odd
Mm-hmm.
world that you're doing 3 rounds on Zoom, like today, right? I don't even get to
Mm-hmm.
see
Mm-hmm.
you from the neck down.
Yeah.
Is the power of practicing, right? And how you
Mm.
practice, do it in your comfort zone, right? But I say this, I've seen it go positive and I've seen it go downhill really quickly without
Mm-hmm.
preparation. And there are basics, right? Like practice, practice, practice. So
Space.
how do you do this? There's so many ways. Write it down, stare at it, say it out loud, record it on your iPhone, ask a friend,
Mm-hmm.
ask a family member, talk out loud while you're in the shower. It
Mm-hmm.
really, you want to get into a rhythm that all of a sudden your narrative, your story, your elevator pitch is tight and you sound like the person that you are. Extrovert, introvert, everything in
Yeah.
between. You have this moment, and as unfair as it might be, to prove yourself within 20 minutes to an hour.
What would you say is the elevator pitch? What should it be made up of from your
Ooh.
perspective?
Yeah.
Like what should it be?
Well, so I think it's like, don't think that deep, right? Like
Okay.
that's my first piece of advice. Don't
Okay.
think that deep.
Okay.
It's
Mhm.
literally, hey, my name is Olivia. I work at NYU. I am
Mhm.
so excited to meet you, Jerica.
Mhm.
Love that top. Oh my God.
Yeah.
So cute,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It's building this authentic relationship on the front
Mhm.
half, but then it's also saying, I want to tell you a little bit about my background, right? So I have
Mhm.
a little, I was an education major when I was in
Mhm.
college. And
Mhm.
now I decided, oh my God, I didn't want to be in the fifth grade classroom because the fifth graders
Mhm.
were terrorizing to me.
Yeah.
And then, you giggle, right? You're like, that other
Mhm.
person's like, ha, ha, that's so
Yeah.
funny. And then
Yeah.
that's literally how it transitions. Like, it does not have to be that
Mm.
serious. But I think
Mhm.
in that first 10 seconds, it's you showing that you have the confidence to literally do some like intrinsic evaluation,
Mhm.
reflection.
Mhm.
I don't know what the right
Mhm.
word is about who
Yeah.
you are, right?
Mhm.
And just being authentically you. I can't tell you enough that that word is what the entire interview process is about, because
Hmm.
they want to know that you are a genuine human being, and I know
Mhm.
that all of these students are. You all are
Yes.
amazing. You got into fabulous colleges,
Yes.
universities. You all are killing the game here.
Yeah, this is so good. Just the humanizing of the process, because I think we hear so much from being on LinkedIn, from these outside sources, that it's just like, you got to do this, hit this thing, hit this question. Even some of the questions I'm asking, it's more from that perspective. But like,
Right.
hey, you're all humans at the end of the day, and I want to feel connected to you. So let me see, parts of you that would help me feel that connection. Now you have to be strategic in what you what you share. You can be like, oh,
Right, right. You want to say you're too exhausted either, right?
No,
yeah,
you don't want to say you're
exactly. Like they're exhausted. But you want to create that connection. The other part of the interviewing successfully is doing company research. And we
oh,
kind of alluded to this in our time together. But for our first and second gen students who are really new to this space, right? Few people talk about how to actually do it. So
hmm.
how much company research is enough?
I have so many thoughts on this, and Jody, I can't wait to hear
I
your
know,
perspective
we have a
too.
lot on this, yeah.
But
Try to
so
keep it concise.
research is so important, but I think the really quick other myth to debunk here too is that
Mhm.
you are an expert, a subject matter expert on that
Mm,
company. That's not the expectation. You shouldn't know all of
mm,
that.
mhm,
However, you do need to know where you're walking into. And I can't tell you
mm.
enough of how many times students will just say, I've never even heard of this company. And they say that to the
Oh,
to the
wow.
hiring manager. And I'm actually going to give you a real life example of what happened last year. I took 20 of my students to advertising week that
Mhm.
happened in New York City. And we had the wonderful opportunity to sit down with the CEO and founder of the Female Quotient, Shelly Zalis, who is a
Wow,
powerhouse. She calls herself the chief troublemaker, which is so
man.
cool. And I took 20 of these students to meet with her. And the reason why we got the chance to meet with her too is that we had an alumni connection who said, I'm going to have this, wonderful little fireside chat for the NYU students to
Yeah.
get to know Shelly. We're sitting down at this little chat, and she says, hi, everybody. My name is Shelly, founder of the Female Quotient. And they start, asking her some questions. And she goes, wait a minute. Do any of you know who I am and what my brand is and what this company is? Not one person raised their hand.
Oh, no. Oh,
So then I
no.
asked in this conversation, I said, Shelly, from your experience, your expertise, tell me
Mm,
how is this future generation going to get
mm,
jobs and internships? She
mm.
goes, I'm sorry, I hate to be this person. I'm going to tell you something it's going to sound really rude. None of you would get hired at my company. She
Wow.
put them in their place. This year, they showed up so
Mhm.
prepared. Two of the students that were there last year, they actually had a session before we went where they did
Yeah.
the research on what the Female Quotient was, who
Mhm.
Shelly is, what are some of the initiatives.
Mm.
Shelly was blown away. And
Wow.
it is just the tiny little things that you do
Mhm.
to pull up Google. It could
Mhm.
even be 5 minutes before you go. I don't
Mhm.
care. Know what you're walking into. And
Hmm.
I'm also going to give you another example too of, you know, what the research is. It's like, look up a video, look up on Instagram, look up on TikTok. Like, you have the media at your fingertips.
Mm-hmm.
And Jody and I were talking about some examples this week when we were prepping for this episode. And I shared with
Mm-hmm.
her that one of my clients that I was helping with was going for a social media position. When you think of social media and you're applying to a company, you would kind of think
Mm-hmm.
that that person should know what the company is and what their social media looks like, right? You know,
Yeah.
that's kind of an inevitable thing. I
Mm-hmm.
guess I didn't really think I had to tell this person that.
Yeah.
So, long story short, she comes back to me and she says, I didn't get the job. And I said, why? Right? You know, what happened?
Mm-hmm.
Because she had a really killer resume, killer
Mm-hmm.
portfolio, fabulous connections. The question she was asked in the interview was, can you tell me one improvement you would make to our
Oh,
website?
wow.
And she goes, I've never seen the website.
Wow.
Just look at the
Yep.
website. You don't even
Yep.
have just start clicking
Yep.
around and do the
Mm-hmm.
things. So it's
Mm-hmm.
just know what you're walking into. That's my 2 cents on the research.
I think this is really helpful for our students to hear all the different ways that you can do research and how you can pull it into the conversation so that they're evaluating, hey, are you a good fit?
Yeah.
Would we want to work with you? And you're kind of being like, hey, I've been able to see these things and I really enjoy the things that you're putting out there and all of that. You're kind of weaving it in. It's like they can see you as a coworker in a
Yeah.
way because you've done the research versus as an outsider, which I think gets you more points to eventually get that acceptance. What are some things that you think our first and second gen students should be thinking about when they're on the interview call? We talked about like the first 10 seconds and all of that, but is there anything else like when they're
Yeah.
going through the first level, second level, third level of the interviews that are important?
Definitely. Definitely. And I think this is such a good question. And the first thing that's coming to my mind is your background. Right. So even before we got on this call, you know, we were all like editing our backgrounds a little bit, making sure like it was organized, that we were in a good space where it wasn't distracting. And I will tell you that recently, you know, we have a peer mentor program in our department where we hire students who will work with academic advisors on leading and teaching our new student seminar course. And so I had done an interview and I had an amazing student on the call because I also knew who that student was, right? But when I looked in their background, there were alcohol bottles everywhere,
Oh Lord. Oh no.
and they were under 21 years old.
Oh no.
So this was something that was so big because this person's responses were excellent. There was so much that they had to bring to the table. I was so distracted by what was behind. That person didn't get the role. And then though, it's being open to the feedback, because then I was able to give that feedback and say, hey, listen, this is why. And I want to help protect you for the future and give you these nuggets of advice so that this doesn't happen again. But I think that's a really big part of the interview process that you can't, you know, obviously when you're in person, you can't, like, they are setting the tone, they are setting the background and the space. But, you know, you want to be mindful of what is behind you. So that is like one of my biggest pieces of advice. The other thing is in order to be a killer interview or interviewer, I should say, is to take a breath, talk slow. I'm one that talks very fast. So it's sometimes really hard for me, but just kind of start to slow it down. It's okay if you don't have the answer right away. You could always kind of fill that like little gap and say, you know, Jerica, that was a great question. Could I have 1 second just to jot down some thoughts? Hiring manager is not going to think twice about that. They want you to have a really good answer and a polished answer to their question. So those are some of the strategies that I say to students. I also think, though, that it is so important that you are brief and succinct in what you are responding. And I also sometimes have a problem with that because I can just like blah, 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 blah. But it's like be very, be very direct with what you were saying and actually tie it off with a bow. So starter, middle, and boom. And
Yep.
then let them ask you more questions. Don't just give them all your answers right away. You want them to keep asking you more.
Yes. You do need to be prepared for some of those standard questions because trust me, they're going to ask you oftentimes, and it's my least favorite question, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Ooh.
Oh gosh, I hate that question. However, to this day, hiring managers are still asking that, right? So there's a few, and you could chat GBT it all you want, and he's going to share some information following this call, but you really do. And those are the questions that you have to be prepared for. The 10-second elevator pitch. Tell me, someone on the other side is listening to 6 of these a day, and they're not always doing their homework. Oftentimes you're going to hear, okay, I have your resume. Tell me about yourself. A bit about your background. What are you doing now? Next, and really importantly, and we talked about this in various ways through this call. So what do you know about X company? Just curious, why do you think you want to work here? I mean, that is 2 questions that have people looking like a deer in headlights across where the hiring manager does not want to see you hesitate.
Mm-hmm.
And why are you going to kill that question in a positive way, I should say?
Mm-hmm. Nice, Phyllis.
Everything we just said.
Mm-hmm.
You did your research. So be prepared on the standard questions because they're going to ask you that. But also think about the questions you're not expecting because you think their 15 minutes is going well. And that last 5 minutes, they ask you and your confidence just goes to the floor, right? Like be comfortable being uncomfortable, number one, and be prepared to answer a question, that you were not necessarily prepared for. And just think about what are those questions. But I have seen so many good opportunities fall by the wayside because they were not prepared for those final questions and answers.
No, and I know that Olivia sent us some questions for our first and second gen students. So I'm definitely going to add those down in the comments below because those are fire. I've had a chance to look at them. And I would also add, like, for what you were talking about, Olivia, of just like feeling comfortable, understanding your background on things. I put a sticky note up that says smile and talk slow.
Same.
For twinning.
I want to share with you one that I have on my desk. It actually says use your words. Competency plus character equals trust. Because I think that is exactly what you're doing in an interview is that you're building rapport and trust with the person you're talking to. But how do you do that if you're not articulating and using your words? So I have those peppered throughout my desk. Also, this is my resume. It's right next to me all the time, because there's sometimes things I'm like, oh crap, I forgot I do this.
Write big words on top, things that you want to remember. Honestly, in this crazy virtual world that we're now, having to navigate on a daily basis, find ways to work it to your advantage because you can.
No, and I think even when I go in person, I always tell people you can bring paper and pen, like to keep, my background, I'm a debater. So I debated in college and things like that. And so you're constantly like writing things. So I'm just in a habit of like pen to paper. It helps me when people are asking questions and things. So you can even bring that on the call. So it, you are talking, but also you can take a little bit of notes so you know how you want to respond to something. But I wanted to ask you for this actionable part, you said, what are your strengths and weaknesses?
Ooh.
Can you answer that for me? So let's pretend we're in a interview. What are your strengths and weaknesses? How would you respond to that? Because I think our first and second gen students would find that helpful.
So this is actually one of my favorite questions. And I'm going to literally say to you exactly how I would respond to this question. Erica, thank you. That is such a good question. And I'm going to just quickly back up before I give you some detail. I'd like to really switch the narrative here on what strengths and weaknesses are to me. I like to position them as strengths and moments and areas of growth because I think a weakness sounds negative. it is not about being negative. It is about what are the things that I'm learning and what are the challenges that I've run into. So with that being a little preface here into this answer, is my strengths are I'm a communicator, I'm a connector. I love to talk. I want to connect the dots, but some of my challenges and some of my areas and moments of growth are kind of doing everything that I just did and explained to you that are my strengths. They play into my moments of growth because sometimes I get too excited. I take so many things on, right? That's all said and beautifully and done and good. It's the fact that literally I need to take a step back. I need to slow down and I need to reevaluate my priorities. And that is my moment of growth, but it plays into also my strengths as what I can bring to this table.
Yes. Man, woo! This is why you're there, Olivia. This is why.
Thanks.
And the other thing I will say, the most commonly answered question about my strength is I am a highly detailed and organized person.
Boring.
Boop, boop. Yes, right? Oh, aren't we all? And she and I talked a lot about this. Oh, please don't say that. Because it's on my resume. I'm a highly efficient, organized, attention to detail.
Yeah.
Take that, and to Olivia's point, find an example, right? Highly organized, efficient, detailed individual can mean a lot of things. Make it matter. Find another way to say that, but attach it to an actual action.
Is it the XYZ method that you guys prefer or the STAR method? Sometimes, I know I'm getting a little nuanced, but.
No, I think it's a mixture. And Jody, I'd be curious too. I think it's a mixture. I think sometimes STAR can just be too much for a response, but I think it's helpful. And I think if you are one of those highly organized, detail-oriented, attention to detail people, it's probably more helpful for you to have a little bit of a structure. I work a little bit better with the X, Y, and the Z, and that's kind of how I just did that strengths and weaknesses question because my strengths are, I love to talk to people, I'm a connector, but then sometimes that challenge is for me is that I have so many things on my plate. These are all so exciting. I get really excited, but then I need to prioritize. Even though I am an organized person, but I need to sit down and I need to reevaluate my priorities. And to me, my brain kind of goes of that's the X, that's the Y, that's the Z.
Yes.
And so, Jody, I'll let you kind of take it away there, but.
I love that you just mentioned STAR. Most of my clients look at me like, what's STAR? It's sometimes actually positioned as SPAR as well, right?
Yeah.
Oh.
So what's interesting about this, and I'm so glad you raised it actually, is that there are companies that I have learned along the way while, in my coaching career that actually use that as their measure of interview success and moving people to the next round. I will tell you this, a little bit of a, inside scoop. Companies like Amazon, they actually go by this method. And they expect those being interviewed to be able to answer that. They're not going to say, tell me about your STAR example, but they expect you to be prepared and to be able to address that. So what is STAR for those of you who are like Googling it now as we talk, right? Situation, task, action, and result. Did I get that right?
Yeah.
So to that point, and what Olivia just said, it's so vital. This is another prep point too. Think about it. Some of my clients are like, I need help with that. I can't. No, you all have some experience that fits into this situation. It doesn't have to be a professional experience, right?
No.
It should be, you're right. You're a student athlete. Like, you've all had a situation, something that you were, meant to do, how you took the action and what came out of it. It's about how you took a challenge or an opportunity and either switch the script to make it a positive or took an opportunity and maybe elevated it to the next level.
Question I have to wrap up the interview section is, how do you stand out at the end? Is there anything students should be thinking about? Thank you letter? No. Thank you email?
Yes.
Send flowers. I don't know.
Oh boy. Don't do that. Don't do that. No, to stand out. And I'm going to tell you 2 quick things that come to mind. When they ask you if you have questions for them, please, 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 please ask them something. It doesn't have to be 10 things, and it honestly shouldn't be. It should be 1 to 3, depending on how much time you have. But they need to be intentional, curated questions. And I know, Jerica, you'll share the ones that I shared with you. But the
Yes.
other thing is to send that thank you letter. And Jody and I talk about this all the time. Nothing frustrates me more when students don't just thank that person for their time. I'm not asking you to write a novel or an essay to them, but it's just something very quick to say, thank you for taking time out of your day to speak with me about how I can fit at XYZ company. And it's also about when you send that message, right? It's we have this kind of within the day, but like early 24-hour rule. You shouldn't have it like you hang up, let's say we hang up the phone here at 11 a.m. and I send it to you at 11:02. That almost is like you haven't even put any thought into what you want to say. But you send it an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours later, you've had time to like think on it, think about your conversation. If your interview is towards the end of the day, right? Let's say you're talking to somebody at 4 o'clock. Well, it's okay that you send something at 8 o'clock in the morning, the next morning, right? But I can guarantee you and tell you the truth that if you do not send that thank you note, your chances of getting that internship or job decrease. It's not saying you're not going to necessarily get it, because I have seen people get a job without doing a thank you note, but just don't be part of that narrative, because it is something that is on your side and that so many students don't realize how vital it is to their process.
That's great. And the other thing we talk about, 12-hour rule, so to speak, or the 24-hour appropriate time frames. Do not send that thank you response after 9, 10 o'clock in the evening to your professional on the other side.
No.
Yeah. I mean, like you just said, 4:30, okay, send it by 8. That's appropriate if you feel like it's in your head and you want to get it out. First thing in the morning, even if you have it ready to go, press send the minute you wake up before you have your coffee. But the other thing about it is, right, do not write a novel, but really think about something, one thing at least that stood out in your conversation. It could even be something that you sidebarred on a personal note, like you both recently traveled to California, something that shows you were listening, aligned to the actual role, and maybe something again that was on a more personal, or how that person may have reacted. Show appreciation, be succinct.
The last question I want to ask you guys, I know time and everything, and I really appreciate you guys giving us your time, because we're really getting actionable advice and things. Some of our students have asked or said, I just want a job and I will go anywhere. How do you advise a student that starts there? It's like a feeling of, I guess, desperation in a way, and I understand it. Yeah. What can they specifically do? How can students balance following their passion with making practical career choices?
I hear that all the time from students, and especially my recent grads from NYU who might have just graduated in May, and they don't have a job yet lined up, but they're like, oh my God, I will literally take anything at this point. I don't care. And I can respect that and understand that, like, that mindset, but I think that is a damaging way to think, because it just does not let you show up intentionally. Companies and jobs want you to be invested in whatever their brand, their product is. And, you could just be kind of applying just for the sake of applying, and then you get an interview, and then you could care less about what their mission, their vision, their initiatives are. So that's why it's so important when you hear that, like, I will take anything. I can respect that hustle, right? I'm kind of, I'm like that in a way too. I will do anything I can.
Yes.
That's good. Keep that up. Yes. But it's like, what does that mean for you, right? It's the research. It's the amount of time you're looking at a job, the amount of time you're spending networking with people who might work at that company before you just cold apply. And I can't listen, I'm also kind of guilty of this too, applying to jobs and not keeping track of them. I kind of keep track of things in my head. And I know that's a really bad tactic sometimes, but you know what? If it works for you, it works for you. But it's like being open to trying some new strategies and some new skills that, like, maybe documenting things on an Excel is weird and uncomfortable for you. Well, then guess what? Go do it. Because that's the best way. Then you can kind of talk about that in the interview. That could be a weakness response, right? Sometimes, and I could have even used this earlier, sometimes I keep everything here. Even though I'm a very organized person, you look at all of my stuff laid out here. But let me tell you kind of a trick that I've recently done. I have an Excel spreadsheet. I put dates, I put deadlines, I have filters. It helps me keep myself on track. And I want to make sure that I'm conveying that exact response.
Yeah. Particularly while you're also think about your audience today, right? You're multitasking. You have finals, you have tests.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But I will quickly say before I forget this, I want you all to be open to part-time internships. I have
Mm,
clients that are seniors in college right now, and it's been so refreshing to hear that some of them have taken on 10 to 15-hour internships that they can do remotely
Mm.
online.
yeah.
That's an
Mhm.
opportunity, particularly in certain fields like IT, et cetera. There
Yeah.
are definitely places that are looking for someone just like you to be able to put in a certain amount of hours and get paid
100%.
or get credit. So
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
dismiss the fact that you could actually be doing something remotely from your room, from your dorm room, from your apartment, and put in some work and get a little bit of experience, particularly in as a freshman or a sophomore. Start now.
Yeah. Olivia, you graciously provided us also with the tracker that we can
Yes.
take a look at and, try it out. As Olivia and Jody are saying, try this out, see how it works for you. Don't keep it all the way up here. Start trying to put it out so that you don't feel like I just want to take everything. Have
Mm,
strategy, which is what we've been talking about throughout this time, our time together.
definitely.
And as we land the plane, I always do a lightning round of questions. Some of these questions come from our students, some come from parents. We always put this out before we jump on the show. I'll get started. What is your take on AI? Are we putting too much focus on it? Is it a true threat to potential jobs, or will it create better opportunities?
AI is not going away, but we really need to know how to leverage and use it. And I think that it
Mhm.
it is one of the biggest pieces of advice that I could give to my students and to the people listening, that just know how to use it, do your
Mhm.
research. It really can
Mhm.
help enhance your job applications. But I
Mhm.
think a really quick sidebar just to mention here is not just to have it replace everything that you're doing. It shouldn't do that. It
Mhm.
should be an enhancer.
Mhm.
It should be something, it's a partnership,
Mhm.
right? So get ChatGPT to start to understand your voice. So use it to your advantage, have it help you. I tell my students this trick all the time really quickly is when you're writing a cover letter, I want you to write the cover letter. You're going to write it, you're
Mhm.
going to put your thoughts down onto paper, but then you're going to throw it into AI and you're going to say, this is my
Mhm.
cover letter. This is what the points I want to get across. Now I'm going to copy and paste the job description. I want to hit enter. And basically, what pumps out to me is a really, really beautiful product of
Mhm.
ChatGPT pulling a lot of the keywords from my job
Mhm.
description and putting it into the flavor of my writing style with the cover letter. And that is the way to land how to like leverage and use AI to your advantage.
Make sure you make that letter personal from that time that the chat GBT sends it back to
Mhm.
you. Make sure it doesn't look like a reused format.
Next question. Student asks, what's the biggest mistake you see students make in the interview?
Oh, the biggest mistake is not knowing the company you're sitting in with.
Okay. Okay.
That happens a lot, especially when I was a recruiter at EY. I had students who thought that this was Deloitte. LOL.
Oh,
It
wow.
was not.
Oh, wow. Oh,
And so
no.
I really mean it. It comes from personal experience. So understanding where you are, being intentional with your questions, and honestly, the other biggest mistake is just not being you. And that is
Mhm.
something that we have been talking about through this show today, but I really want to
Mhm.
just drive this home
Yes.
again, is to say show up authentically
Mhm.
you. Don't
Mhm.
pretend to be somebody that you're not.
Mhm.
Just be you.
Last question. What's the most underrated thing students can do to set themselves apart? It's the last question from our audience.
I'll jump in quickly. We talked a little
Oh.
bit about this. I feel really passionate about being a person. What
Mm,
is your
Mhm.
story? Don't hide from something that makes
Mhm.
you stand out in your world. It could be professional, it could be personal. Find a way to take a story that is meaningful to you about who you
Mhm.
are, spin it in a positive way, and
Mhm.
share it in a way that is succinct, appropriate. And
Mhm.
that's what makes you stand out. Like we
Mhm.
talked about before, there's 10 people up for the same job, right? Who's going to get
right.
it at the end of the day? Equal
Mhm.
skills. Show me something about you that you think stands out. And don't
Mm.
be afraid to share something meaningful and purposeful.
I want to thank you both for coming on the New College Perspective. We've talked about a lot of things. We've gotten to detail. We've we've laughed, we've gone, okay, what do we do? How do we do this? Which I've loved. And if students are listening and would like to reach out to learn more about the work that you both do with early career professionals, where do you suggest they go? What are the handles, all those things?
100%. And I wanted to quickly just say something before I answer that I just think is so important as students when they're like, I don't have this experience. I don't know. I don't know what's put on my resume, what's put on my LinkedIn. You are all sitting in some amazing, fantastic classroom spaces and working with world-renowned professors. Document the work you're doing in the classroom. That is a huge piece of that interviewing process. So that is my underrated response question. But if you want to connect with me, I'm more than happy to. My door's seriously always open. So feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, Olivia Battinelli, and you can follow my Instagram, Live It Up Coaching.
Same, I'm on LinkedIn. My company is joe.b, Early Career Coaching. You can find me on www.job-earlycareercoach.com. Please reach out. Everything we said today, let us be your virtual mentor. We're happy to do so.
Yes. Students, first and second gen students. I know we have some parents tuning in as well.
Woo!
I know you are leaving this conversation. This conversation was fire. It was amazing.
It was so much fun. Thank you.
So if you've enjoyed this episode, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. And if you found it helpful, please share it with a friend who's also navigating internships, interviewing, or their first job search. Bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.